Welcome on this snowy evening for what is sure to be a very fun, very cozy, intimate event with the lovely Paula Munier for the Snow Lies Deep in conversation with Laura Knoy. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a blast. We are filming this for all of you who couldn't make it due to the snow, but we do have a couple who trumped here. Very brave souls. So without further ado, Paula and Laura.
Good evening, Ryan. So I'm so happy to be here because I love being in this beautiful bookstore, and I'm especially happy to be with Paula Munier, author of the unique Mercy Carr series. And I'm going to tell you during this interview what makes this series so cool and so unique. So and then we'll open it up to the questions from our two stalwart audience members. You'll notice Paula and I are sitting cozily because we both took our giant snow boots off. So it's a cozy chat tonight here at Gibson's. And Paula, did you call the weather gods for the title of your book, The Snow Lies Deep?
Well, you know, I guess you shouldn't entitle your book The Snow Lies Deep and not be surprised when it snows. The snow is so deep that nobody's here except the intrepid Kathy and Steve and Ryan and the lovely Michael and everyone here at Gibson's. But, you know, that's what happens. In New England, it snows.
Well, and snow and cold and the solstice and the dark times of year, these are all themes in the book, along with Christmas, of course, and a creepy villain, titled the Yuletide Killer. And I want to get to that in a moment, Paula. But just introduce us first, please, to Mercy Carr for people who might not be familiar with Mercy.
Okay, well, Mercy Carr, she's the heroine of the series, and she's a former MP who served in Afghanistan. And when her fiance was killed in battle, and she was wounded, she came home. And her fiance had been a dog handler, and he handled Elvis, who was a bomb-sniffing dog, smartest dog in the world. And so the last thing he said to her before he died was, "Take care of my dog." So she went and found Elvis, who was in big trouble because some of these dogs, you hear about these working dogs and you think, oh, the Army takes care of them, and they do take pretty good care of the Army dogs, but there are dogs who are defense contractor dogs and they end up in shelters and in a very bad place. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's what inspired me to write the series. Was I found out about this organization called Mission Canine Rescue, and their whole job is to go find these dogs, rescue them, and find them forever homes. And I had done a fundraiser with them, and I was so impressed and fell in love with the dogs and the handlers. And I thought, oh, I have to write about this.
Wow, so that's the origin story of both Mercy and Elvis.
And Elvis,
okay.
Yes, and so they come home. They're both mourning their man and their mission, and they come home to Vermont and the mountains of New England to grieve and to find their way into a civilian life, to make that transition. And I grew up in the military. My dad was in the military, and I've seen a lot of people make that transition. That can be a tough one, right? Especially when you've been in war.
Right, and in fact, in the last book that I interviewed you about, In the Night Woods, PTSD and the homecoming and the Odyssey, those were big themes in that book. And since you mentioned your military background, Paula, I mean, I wonder how much of you, I know you get this question all the time, but I love it, is reflected in the character of Mercy. I mean, your love and respect for dogs, for example. So how else is your own personality or your own background reflected in Mercy Carr?
Well, certainly I have a soft spot in my heart for the men and women who serve in our military. I always have, and I always will. I didn't serve in the military, and, you know, they didn't accept women until West Point until the year after I graduated from high school. I'm sure that had I been born a little later, my father would have shipped me off. But I dodged that bullet, and believe me, so did the Army. But I still have a soft spot in my heart, and I always wondered, you know, because so many of my fellow and sister kids in the military, my fellow Army brats, did go off, right, and did serve. And so I always wondered, what would that have been like, and could I have done it? Could I have been successful? Right? And so it's kind of my way of writing about the road not taken, right? And of course, she's taller and thinner
and she has red hair.
Has red hair. She's who I would be, right? If I had been in the military.
But you write her so authentically, Paula, and so even though you didn't serve, you know, that experience shows through in the character.
Sure. Well, I do think I know military people. You know, my father, who was a huge presence in my life, and my friends, and all the people I grew up with, right? I grew up in that world.
Right.
And so I was steeped in it. And I think that's why so many writers end up writing not about their childhood so much, but about the childhood setting they grew up in, right? It informs their work.
Right.
You know, Walter Mosley once said, as you know, we met Walter Mosley, right? And at the book festival. And he once said that, you know, someone asked him, well, how do you recreate 1940s LA? And he says, because that was my parents' time. So our parents' time is really our time too, because we grew up in it. Even though it's later, we're in their world, and their world is informed by that time. So I was informed by the military, even though I wasn't in the military, I was part of a military family.
Right. And another theme that comes up from that military family, both for Mercy and Elvis the dog, is PTSD, which you dealt with a lot in the last book.
Right.
But in this book, there's you talk about PTSD, but not as much. But you talk about Elvis and Mercy are always hypervigilant. Is that something you noticed among the military people?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever goes away, that sort of hypervigilance, at least not among the people I talk to. And I think, you know, as civilians, as parents, we can be hypervigilant. And I am hypervigilant too, still, about, you know, things that affect my children, right? And think now with my mother living with us, things that affect my mother. So I do think that hypervigilance, if you grow up in any kind of stressful environment, whether it's war or whether it's, you know, it can be anything, right? Just making sure your children survive to adulthood, that requires a kind of vigilance, right?
Well, and Mercy gets a double dose of hypervigilance because she has this military background, so she kind of, you know, she's imbued with that. But then when the book opens, she's a mom. So she has the hypervigilance of a new mom, and she has this hypervigilance anyway from her military background. So she's always on high.
Right. And she was a military policewoman. And I think, you know, cops and law enforcement, they have that same sort of hypervigilance. So, yes, she does have a double whammy of vigilance, I think.
One of the things I like about Mercy is her knowledge and appreciation of literature. And I'm thinking that's a reflection of you, Paula, because you're a writer, you're a literary agent, you're a writing coach. I mean, she's quoting Shakespeare, she knows about mythology, she knows about religion. And I think that's what makes these books so interesting to read. You know, it isn't just whodunit and let's collect clues. You know, there's an important element, this hefty intellectual component to Mercy Carr. Why is that so important to you to include that in her character?
Well, I think part of the reason is because often people resort to the military stereotype, right? That doesn't include necessarily literature and the arts. And if you know any people who grow up in the military or serve in the military, they are well-rounded people with all kinds of interests, you know? And I wanted to make sure that she was well-rounded too, and that she had both those. Because, you know, as an agent, I'm an agent by day, I have a lot of clients who are former law enforcement, former military, and they're all writers. They're writing novels, and they love literature, and, you know, they're the perfect example to me of well-rounded warriors.
Right. Bruce Robert Coffin.
Right, exactly.
Who I got to interview a couple of years ago, former chief homicide detective, I think, for the Portland Maine Police Department.
Portland Police Department Sergeant, yes, a great guy. And then you have people like, you know, all kinds of people who've served and they're writing. And, you know, like I have another client, Brian Thiem, and he was an Oakland homicide detective for 30 years. And then he got, you know, an MFA from WestCon, and now he writes a wonderful series. So, you know, there are a lot of people who have a lot of interests. You know, all of us, I think, are far more complex and complicated than people seem to know. Mm-hmm. Even the people who know us the best don't necessarily know all the aspects and facets of our personality.
Let's talk about this latest book, The Snow Lies Deep. And this is always so challenging as an interview to talk about someone's book, and you want to get people excited, but you don't want to give it away.
Right.
So I will do my best.
Okay.
What's the mystery that Mercy has to solve this time? Just sort of give us the overall.
Well, the mystery is someone is running around killing Santas in North Shore. North Shore is this quintessential New England town, beautiful, especially at Christmas, and especially during the holidays. And they have this festival that runs 12 days of Christmas, starting with the winter solstice, called the Solstice Soiree, and it runs from the winter solstice up to New Year's. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful activity. They have Christmas markets, they have plays, they have concerts, they have all this great Christmas stuff, and yet someone is going around murdering the Santas. And so I really wanted to call it the Three Dead Santas, but my publisher wouldn't let me. So it's called The Snow Lies Deep. But basically that's it. The Yuletide killer is going around knocking off Santas, and she has to stop it.
Well, and as I was reading, I kept thinking about the juxtaposition of Christmas, right? Kindness and goodness with murder. And right at chapter 1, we see Mercy and her husband, Troy, anticipating their first Christmas with their baby daughter. They're so excited. They want it to be perfect. But they spend most of the week tracking down a killer.
Yes.
So how did you approach that contradiction as you wrote the book?
Well, Christmas is a surprisingly popular time in which to set a murder mystery. There's something
I did not know that.
Yes, there's something about the juxtaposition, right, of murder and miracles, right? And I think it has to do with the solstice itself, which, all of our traditions, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Hanukkah, all of these traditions, winter solstice, are all about the darkness and the light, because the winter solstice is the longest night of the year. And you celebrate it because as soon as the longest night of the year is over, you know that the sun will return. And the days will eventually get shorter, and eventually spring will come. And that's what I love about the holidays, right? Especially this time of year, all these holidays that happen in December and New Year's, because they're all about the darkness and the light. And so murder and miracles go together because it's darkness and light.
I did not know that. Still, Santa Claus.
Yes, I know, Santa Claus. I know, but we care about Santa Claus, and so we care about the victims, and we want justice to be served, right? So
yeah,
it was sort of irresistible.
So again, I don't want to give the story away, but there's some realistic elements that you use, Paula, to weave into this mystery. And one of them is related to the solstice. There's a group of druids who we meet early in the book, a large contingent of them.
Yes.
How do the druids help enhance this story? And for people who aren't really quite sure what druids are all about, you might just give us a little reminder too.
Right. Well, modern day druids are, they're druids in terms of the ancient Celts, right? So it's a pagan religion. And there are a lot of modern druids and a lot of Wiccans and a lot of other groups who celebrate the ancient pagan ways, which for druids is basically nature. That the divine is to be found in nature, particularly trees, right? And so there are a lot of modern day druids, and I've had them in a lot of the books in the series, and I love them because I think they add an extra little bit of wackiness, because we live here in New England, it's all woods, 80% woods, and there's wacky in the woods. Some of it good, some of it bad. The druids are a positive force, but there are also negative forces.
Yeah, so are there, and I was surprised because there's this whole contingent in this town. Are there large groups of druids in northern New England?
There are groups of druids and Wiccans as well.
Yeah.
And other pagan sects, so yeah, there are. When I say large, because we are not a heavily populated area,
right?
But there are absolutely druids and Wiccans.
And there's another group of people who Mercy's friends and family regard as unwanted, unwelcome outsiders. A group who comes to protest the druids. They have other goals too, as we learn. I won't give it away, but here are the druids having their nice solstice celebration, and this group is sort of protesting them and trying to drown them out. So who are these folks?
Well, these folks are inspired by what happened here in New Hampshire. If you remember, in Grafton, we had a Midwestern millionaire come and buy up a lot of land and create a libertarian utopia. And it turned out to be disastrous in many ways. And it drew all kinds of people and created all kinds of problems. And there's a wonderful book by a journalist called A Libertarian Walks into a Bear.
Yes, I have not read that. I have heard about that
It's
book.
a great book.
Okay.
And that inspired me to create this group of people who, who are a little more religious as opposed to libertarian, but still, that the idea that a group of strangers would come and try to influence a community, right, that's been here for hundreds of years, right? Our New England towns have been here a long time and have long traditions and deeply held beliefs. And so when you have all these outsiders come with a totally different belief system and try to shake up the infrastructure of the town, it's always very interesting. And I was so struck by that experience in Grafton.
Yep, I can see that.
I love that book, and I got such a kick out of it, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to do my version of that in the Mercy Carr books, which is what I did.
Okay, now I'm seeing where that comes from. And it's all woven together.
Yes.
So I won't give it away, but these disparate groups end up coming together, and I don't want to say chaos ensues, but mayhem and murdered Santas ensue.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to talk about the role of animals in your books, Paula, because there's a lot there. First of all, the dogs, Elvis and Susie Bear. You talked a little bit about Elvis earlier, but just tell us what makes him so amazing. I'm not a dog person. I know more about cats. I learned so much from reading these books.
Well, Elvis is a Malinois, and Malinois are Belgian Shepherds. If you know, just recently at the National Dog Show, the winner was a Belgian Shepherd named Soleil, and she's a beautiful dog because there are 4 kinds of Belgian Shepherds. And she is a Belgian sheepdog, Soleil, and Elvis is a Malinois. They're all known to be highly intelligent, highly athletic, highly energetic dogs. And Elvis, I like to say, he's the smartest dog in the world. And I said that because I had met several Malinois, because there are a lot of those dogs are working dogs, particularly for the military. They're bomb sniffing dogs, they're drug sniffing dogs. They can do anything. They're the smartest dogs in the world. And I had been grown up with dogs, all kinds of dogs. My dad had Weimaraners and Vizslas and Great Danes and all kinds of pointers, all kinds of smart dogs. But I have to tell you, and I had poodles. Poodles are smart, wicked smart dogs. But then we got our own Elvis named Blondie.
Oh, so you have a Malinois.
I have a Malinois,
Okay.
and let me tell you, that dog speaks English. She is the smartest dog. She's unbelievable. She's just unbelievably smart. And so I was so thrilled because now I know I got it right. I got Elvis right because I have a living, breathing Elvis in my house now.
Wow.
We also have a Susie Bear.
Susie Bear. Yeah, tell us about Susie Bear.
We have 2 Susie Bears. We have a Newfoundland Retriever mix named Bear, and we have a full-blooded Newfoundland rehomed named Cocoa Puff. And I got that right too. I was so glad because she is the happiest dog in the world, and Bear is the friendliest dog in the world. Newfoundlands are just friendly, happy, chill. They had a wonderful day today because it snowed. There's nothing a Newfie likes better than snow. So she just went out on the old, the table we have a table and 4 chairs right on the patio, and it has a cover for the winter, and it was covered in like 4 inches of snow at least. And she just gets up on top of the table and sits there and watches the world go by and the snow come down.
Isn't this the best?
Yeah, she's having a great time. So it was really great for us to get these dogs because now I knew about them and I'd studied them and I'd met a lot of those dogs, but now I have them right in my house.
Right. Well, I have been amazed reading 2 of your books so far at just what these dogs can do. I mean, Elvis, Mercy says to him, seek. She knows something's up, her spidey sense is tingling, but Elvis, he goes to it. I mean, is that for real? Is that what these dogs can do?
Absolutely for real.
That's amazing.
It's absolutely for real. It's kind of amazing what dogs can do. I mean, they can they have dogs trained to to sense when your blood sugar level drops if you're a diabetic. They have dogs trained who can find cancer. They train dogs to find COVID, right? They've trained dogs to do virtually everything. You name it, a dog can be taught to do it. It's kind of amazing how smart they are, and I didn't really necessarily believe that until I had Elvis and Blondie in our house, because Blondie really does understand virtually everything we say, no matter how we say it. We try to say it differently, use different words, doesn't matter.
I see.
And there are dogs who literally speak 1,000 words. They have a vocabulary of 1,000 words. So when we're doing that with Blondie now, they have this setup where you can put a treat under a word, and there's little push buttons with words on top, and they can learn to form sentences.
Holy smokes!
To get
I
what
had
they
no
want.
idea.
Right, and then they'll do it without the treats. They'll just say, it'll say outside, and the dog will hit outside, and they want to go outside.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I've watched a million documentaries on it. Give me a dog show, and I'm watching it, right? And I talked, of course, to a lot of dog trainers.
Right.
And a lot of canine cop dogs,
Right.
especially the ones in Vermont and New Hampshire.
Well, again, as someone who didn't grow up with dogs, I have learned so much reading these books, and it's just incredible what the dogs can do. There are cats in the book too.
Yeah.
I won't say more than that, but I appreciate that you put a cat in this book, so thank you very much.
Well, we have a cat at home too.
Yes.
Yeah. She doesn't think much of the dogs.
So along with the dogs, wild animals, Paula, often play sort of a role in your they're important in your books, the animals who populate the forests of northern New England, which makes sense because Mercy's husband Troy is a Vermont game warden. And in this latest story, illegal hunting plays an important role.
Yes.
But I have to say, and this again is I think what makes this series that you've written unique. I mean, Mercy is unique. I've not met a crime solver like her. But also, poaching isn't really a crime that a lot of people write about, right? I mean, it doesn't seem to show up in a lot of mysteries. So, what connections do you see between poaching and other bad behaviors? Because you really make that connection in this book.
Right. Well, poaching is, bad on so many levels, right? And this kind of people who poach are also, they are by definition criminals, because poaching is against the law. And so they are apt to perform other criminal activities as well, right? The thing about the woods is you can hide a lot of stuff in the woods, right? And, if you talk about a game warden, the average game warden in Vermont, and it's not much different here in New Hampshire, has 300 square miles to patrol on his own or her own, right? So they're spread really thin on the ground, and even thinner now, thanks to cuts in the national forests and stuff like that. So they really can't be everywhere at once.
Right.
So that means there are pockets of the forest that are being used to hide criminal activity. Some of it poaching, some of it smuggling. I mean, you name it, it's going on in the woods.
Yeah. So do you think poaching doesn't get enough attention as a serious crime? Like, I appreciate that you put it in here because you're right. It's a crime, and it's often connected with other illegal behavior.
Well, certainly, I am a natural resources steward of New Hampshire, proud to be one, and we are devoted to protecting the flora and fauna of New Hampshire. And poaching does not help the flora and fauna of New Hampshire, or Vermont or any New England state. So poaching deprives, legitimate hunters of the harvesting that they could do, and it disrupts the habitat, it upsets the equilibrium, it destroys keystone species, it does a million terrible things to our environment, right? And so poaching is just wrong. I mean, I feel very strongly about poaching, and so do the game wardens and the park rangers who are sworn to protect the flora and fauna.
And the legitimate hunters.
Right, exactly. There won't be anything left if the poachers, and now, depending on what's popular, they poach all kinds of things, all kinds of species for all different kinds of reasons.
Wow. And again, poaching just isn't something that I think about that much, so I'm glad you brought it to light in this book. So people can read more about the role that it plays. I want to go back to the woods. These are always important in your books, Paula. And I love the way you always describe the trees in detail. And my husband is here. He's a forester. He appreciates that too. So
I didn't know you were a forester. My father was a forestry major at Purdue, and then he went to the military.
So we both appreciate that.
Love our foresters.
You know, the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it feels. For you personally, Paula, what is it about the woods that just kind of inspires you?
Well, I think, when I was a kid, we lived most of my childhood in Germany, in the mountains of Germany. And every Saturday, my father, the forestry major, would take me for a walk in the woods with the dogs. And I think that's why I love dogs. That's why I love trees. You know, there was a special time for Dad and me. And I also think it's just beautiful. There's a peacefulness. There's a stillness. There's a sort of heaven, right, in the woods. And I grew up appreciating that and missing that. And so that's why when we moved to New England, I thought, oh, it felt like coming home to me. Because it's very similar. The topography and the mountains are very similar to the mountains that we lived in when I was a kid in Germany.
Yeah, I know for some people it's walking on the beach, but for me it's the woods.
Yeah. I like the beach too, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's all about trees.
Yeah. No, I get you. Completely with you on that one. I know you get this question all the time, Paula, apologies. But I have to ask it. So the books are set in Vermont.
Yeah.
You live in New Hampshire, not too far from Concord.
Right.
How did you get to know Vermont so well? Because the descriptions are spot on.
Well, you know, when I started writing the series, I lived in Massachusetts on the South Shore. And Vermont was my happy place. And I just loved to go to Vermont. I hadn't been to New Hampshire, right? Now I'd love to go to New Hampshire. I live in New Hampshire. I couldn't be happier because I do love New Hampshire, which is different from Vermont, but a lot of the things are the same. The things I love, the woods, the nature, the people. You know, people are different from Vermont, New Hampshire, but they're all great. You know, there's something about people who live in these kind of New England villages that are it's very appealing, right? And deep-rootedness, which I like. I think if you grow up as an Army brat, living in a million places, going to 12 schools in 11 years, you appreciate deep-rootedness.
Wow.
And I feel rooted here.
Wow, 11 schools in 12 years?
No, I got that wrong. 12 schools in 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah. All kinds of schools. Catholic schools, you know, public schools, German schools, you name it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I want to open it up to our illustrious audience of 3 stalwart people who came out.
Yay.
Hooray. Any questions? I actually know all these people by name. Kathy?
So I guess, I love this series and I'm looking forward to reading this. And Laura touched on it why you started Vermont. So did you think about this series when you were living in Massachusetts and wanted to start and have it set in Vermont? Or because I always wondered why, because I knew you were from New Hampshire or lived in New Hampshire, why you chose Vermont as your settings.
Well, if I'd known about New Hampshire then, I probably would have chosen New Hampshire. But I was living in Massachusetts and I was writing a book called The Writer's Guide to Beginnings, which is a book for writers to tell them how to open a story in a compelling way. And I had a lot of great openings from, you know, famous books that we all love, right? Like Call Me Ishmael, you know, all these kinds of things. But I needed an entire opening chapter that I could put through its paces, editing and so forth, to show different techniques that you can use to create a compelling opening chapter. And I couldn't use anybody else's chapter for that. So I thought, well, I'll just write one myself. And I had just done this fabulous fundraiser with all these wonderful working dogs for Mission Canine Rescue. And because it wasn't a real book, there's a lesson here for writers everywhere. It wasn't a real book, it was just a chapter to you know, for the Writer's Guide to Beginnings. I'll just put everything I love in the book, in this opening chapter. And so I threw in Shakespeare, and I threw in, set it in Vermont, and I made Mercy, you know, the road not taken, maybe what I might have been like had I been in the military, and a policewoman, because I'm obsessed with mysteries and police procedurals. So I made her a former MP. I gave her a dog based on these dogs that I met at the rescue place, at the canine rescue fundraiser, and I just threw in everything I loved.
Because it's just a chapter.
It
No
was
pressure.
just a chapter. It wasn't a real book. And then, of course, my agent read the Writer's Guide to the Beginning and said,
Here it comes.
wow, this is a great chapter. You should write that book.
Wow, so that's how Mercy Carr was born.
That's how Mercy Carr was born. So I wrote that book, and before I knew it, she sold it, and now I'm writing book 8.
That's awesome.
So write what you really think would be fun to write. Throw in everything but the kitchen sink, and that will take you where you want to go.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah. Thank you for that question, Kathy.
So can I ask more?
Yes.
So one of my other
there's no
favorite
competition
characters
for other-
is
yeah.
Mercy's grandmother.
Yes, patience.
Patience, yes, the vet.
Yes.
And how did she come about?
Well, of course, who doesn't love veterinarians? And right here in my town of Salisbury, there's a wonderful veterinarian called Blackwater Veterinary Service. And there's fabulous vets there. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to be a vet? I think if I, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet, right? And I think everybody who loves animals would like to be a vet. And then I thought, well, it's going to be her grandmother, so of course, I don't necessarily go too far afield when I create my characters, and Patience is basically my 2 grandmothers. She's a combination of them. And neither of them were a vet, but they were very practical, smart, loving women, strong women who worked hard. My grandmother, one of my grandmothers, worked in a GE factory for 30 years. They're really strong, Depression-born children who grew up to be these wonderful women. And they both baked. Fabulous bacon. Patience bakes, right? That's her stress relieving activity. She bakes, so there's always bakes. And in this new book I'm writing, I actually have recipes. So.
Oh, because Patience makes cinnamon rolls in this book.
Yes.
And I thought, I kind of want a cinnamon roll now.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well, that's the thing. Food plays a big role in my books because, why not?
Right. Because why not? Because everyone likes to eat.
Yes, and I do think there's a tradition of, here in New England and also in the Midwest, when my parents grew up, and in the military too, where you don't necessarily take a bottle of wine, you take dessert, you take something you've made, whether it's a casserole or a pie, you take something good to eat. And I think that carries through in the books.
They definitely do that. Yeah, I was a little bit hungry. In fact, after I finished reading the book this afternoon, I had a snack.
Yeah.
There's so much food. Steve?
Yes, well, Kathy started asking the question that I was going, and it gets at the wonderful characters, especially in the 2 families, which leads me to, well, Kathy asked about Patience. I'm going to ask about Mercy's mom, who is so different than her mother and her daughter.
Yes.
And the father, who is very supportive of the mother and doesn't seem to be on the same plane as his mother-in-law and his daughters. So where do these people come from? Just your mind, or?
Well, Grace, Mercy's mother, is very much like my mother. She's very chic. My mother was always taller, thinner, and chicer than I. She was sort of like Jackie Onassis growing, that's who she was like when I was growing up. And so I always felt a little, wilted. I mean, in her presence, because I was not chic enough, right? Which is not to say she made me feel that way. She always made me feel wonderful, right? She's a wonderful mother. But I felt that way in comparison. And I said, Mercy has that too, right? Where her mother's always trying to get her to, do her hair and that kind of thing. And so that part of Grace is very much like my mother. But also what's like Grace is like my mother is that she, to quote my mother's favorite movie, My Fair Lady, there's a line in one of those songs when they're talking, Rex Harrison is complaining about women. And it's funny because My Fair Lady is my mother's favorite movie, and we own it, And we watch it over and over again. And there's a line that says, "She will listen very nicely, then go out and do precisely what she wants." And that is my mother, and that is Grace. And I admire the hell out of both of them for being that way. I've never quite been able to pull that off, but I think it's great if you can do it. So.
I was going to ask about Grace too, so I'm glad you asked that. And the way you describe her, and she doesn't put Mercy down,
No.
but it's the little things like Grace waved her manicured hand, or her fur cuffs, which matched her, her coat perfectly, and Mercy's in her cargo pants and
Yeah, exactly.
her kick around boots,
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Did your mom want you to be a lawyer?
No, my dad did. My mother, of course, wanted me to be an actress.
And Mercy's parents, they didn't want her to be a lawyer per se, but it was sort of suggested.
Yes, Grace very much
Yeah.
wanted her to join the
Yeah.
family firm.
Yeah.
And she did not want to be a lawyer.
And neither
Yeah.
did her brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Her brother became a doctor. He didn't want to be a lawyer either. Nobody wanted to join the family farm. Sorry.
Is her uncle your dad, the military guy who knows everything
Oh, the
about
uncle.
what's going, all the secrets and
The
Yes.
CIA guy.
When I was writing, I can't remember which book, but one book in the series was 2021, and my dad died. And that just sort of stopped me. I couldn't write. I had a deadline. I couldn't write. He died a little unexpectedly, or maybe it was just unexpected to me. He was this kind of guy you thought would live forever. He was immortal. And it just really sort of stunned me the way grief can do. And I thought, I gotta write this book. How can I get through this? How can I get through this? And I know this sounds weird, but we buried him down at the Veterans Cemetery. Beautiful ceremony. It was during COVID, right? But we had the bugler there playing taps. Anyway. And I got home, and my husband texted me from the barn and said, "Go outside and look outside." And I went outside, and there on this arbor was this huge barred owl. It was a spread wings, and he just sat there. He sat there for a long time, and I thought, "Oh, this is my dad." Even my husband, who's not woo at all, was like, "Oh, this is weird," because that barred owl stayed until I went out there, and kept staying, and then finally left, and we haven't seen him since.
Wow.
But I thought to myself, I said, "Okay, what can I do? The only way to get through this book is to write Dad into the book." So I created the Colonel, who in many ways is very much like my father, and my father was a colonel, this guy's a colonel, and he did a lot of secret stuff during the Cold War, as my dad did, and went to his grave with those secrets. So it's my way to kind of explore that, and to honor my dad in the process. No,
He's
thanks
a
for
great
asking.
He's a great character.
Yeah, well, he was a great character
He's
in
one
real
of my
life.
favorites because he's older. He's very elegant.
Yeah.
He has a lot of secrets. Once in a while, he'll give one out if he needs to.
Mhm.
He's kind of a handsome ladies' man.
Yes.
I love that question. Yeah, he's a great character.
He's my favorite.
Ryan?
Yeah, I want to know about your writing setup and your habits. Like, what does it look like when you sit down to write? Like, do you have music playing? What does your desk look like?
Oh, it's such a mess, I have to tell you. I have a lovely office, a beautiful office on the second floor. We live in this lovely old colonial built in 1760, kind of a 4x4 kind of thing. And upstairs I have a wonderful office I've created especially for me. My husband made me this beautiful desk, huge, file cabinets, the whole thing, bookshelves, a Buddha, everything I need, right? And I'm never in it. And I'm ever, because my mother can't do the stairs, and now she doesn't like to be alone. So now I'm in our living room with the dogs and my mother and a laptop desk. And it works, it was fine. I mean, I do have a day job, so I have to sort of ride around that. If I get stuck, I just read. Usually I read Anne Cleves or Jack Reacher. because the
Really?
lead child writes action like nobody's business. And if I have a big action scene coming up, they're always challenging for me. And so I just read Reacher, and then because like Lee says, you write the slow parts fast and the fast parts slow. And so I just read all my betters when I get stuck, and usually that helps.
That's a challenging environment to work in, with the dogs and the mom and the laptop, and you're downstairs.
Right. And the TV, I always have the TV on, so my mom has something to watch. Usually, God bless her, I make her watch British mysteries because you can get the subtitles.
Yeah.
Because she won't wear her hearing aids, so then it's not so loud. I can still work. But yeah, it is. But you know, when I was a reporter back in the day, and I had small children, they were running around. So it's not that much different, you know, than having small kids running around. My mother and the dogs, it's the same thing.
So you have I'm so glad you asked that, Ryan, because Paula has a day job as a literary agent, and she's a writing coach, and you put on these writing weekends and so forth. How do you even find the time? And you've got care of your mom, and you've got 4 dogs.
Well, yeah, it's more complicated than it used to be, certainly. But, you know, you just have to make time for what really matters to you.
Yeah, that's right.
In the end.
That's right.
I mean, because otherwise, I was 62 years old when my first mystery got published, and I wanted to be a mystery writer since I read, you know, Nancy Drew and the Bobbsey Twins and Sherlock Holmes as a kid. But I was busy doing other things, right? I was a journalist, and then I was an acquisitions editor, then I became an agent. And then finally, once my kids were grown and gone, I sort of had this headspace because I was relieved of that hypervigilance, at least for a little while. Now I've got it back with my mother, but I was relieved of it. And without that, I could really allow my imagination. Plus, I was working for myself as an agent. You know, I'm part of an agency, but I'm basically working for myself, so I didn't have to go into the office. I had more, my time was more my own,
Right.
even though I was working just as hard. And so that made a big difference too.
Right. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Are you a plotter?
Well, I wrote a book on
Ooh.
plot
Okay.
called Plot Perfect and How to Plot. That was my first book. I've written 3 books on writing. That was my first one. And when I get stuck, I also read my own book. Remind myself that I do know how to do this. Well, it's funny because one of the reasons I waited so long to write mysteries, I'd written a lot of other stuff, you know, published a lot of other stuff in my life, but mostly nonfiction, mostly shorter works. But I think I was intimidated by the plotting of a mystery. And then after I wrote a book on plot, I was like, okay, if you can't plot a mystery now, shame on you. You just wrote a book on plot. So yes, if I get stuck, I go and I reread, remind myself of the techniques I used. Although when you're writing a book a year, you don't have, at least I don't have as much time to really plot the way I used to, right? So it's a little more on the fly, but I know my plot points. Right now I'm 3 scenes away from the end of book number 8. And I know what's going to happen in those scenes.
Does it make a difference whether you plot it ahead of time or just let it spin out of your head? How do you find?
I need parameters, right? And the plot gives us parameters and gives me parameters. I have to usually write the first draft to know what the book is really about, theme-wise. Especially when I first started. I could plot it out, but there wasn't necessarily any there because I hadn't recognized what the theme was. Now I'm better at knowing. You know, for a book like The Snow Lies Deep, the themes are pretty obvious, right? Community, family, you know, darkness, light, right? Winter, right? The promise of spring, all those things. So it was pretty obvious thematically and for this book, but it's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad that this came up. And just for people watching who don't know, there's this whole thing. Are you a plotter? You lay out a plot, A, B, C, or you're a pantser. You kind of write by the seat of your pants. And so
Right.
Paula's a plotter.
Yeah, I can't imagine just sitting down and making it all up and staying on track, you know? Mysteries are, when they're written well, as I hope to do with every book, they're tightly plotted.
Sure.
So you can't go too far afield.
And
Right.
everything has to make sense at the end.
Right.
You can't leave just someone there.
No loose ends.
Yeah,
You hear about it.
exactly.
Believe me, you hear about it. I have a wonderful editor named Pete Wolverton, who won the Ellery Queen Award, which is a prestigious award given to publishing people by MWA, and he keeps me on track.
Yeah.
I sometimes hold back, and he'll say, "Go for broke," and I'll say, "Well, what? Isn't that too much of a stretch?" And he'll say, "I'll tell you if it's too much of a stretch." Okay. So he's got my back, and that's great. That there's nothing like a great editor who saves your butt every time.
Yes.
He saves my butt every time.
I have had several, and they absolutely save my bacon.
Yeah.
They absolutely save. I shudder to think
Oh, I know.
what my book would look like without these people.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Unbelievably, this has been so fun. We have to wrap up in about 5 or 10 minutes. But Steve, yeah.
And it gets to what we were just talking about. Do you ever surprise yourself? Does something come out of your head while you're writing your tightly planned plot that you didn't expect or surprises you?
Every once in a while. In this book, I won't give it away, but there's a scene close to the end that has to do with Mercy and Troy, her husband, and a baby, because this whole time they've been chasing around murderers and trying to save this, the town of North Shore from the Yuletide killer, but they still want to have the perfect Christmas for their baby on her first Christmas. And there is a scene where I think I managed to do that surprised me. And I really wish that scene would happen to me in my life, real life. I'm going to have to. My husband hasn't read it yet, but I'm hoping that he'll see and he'll know. Oh, she wants that. And I think that's why I got some interesting reviews this time around. Sort of magical, poetic, captivating kind of adjectives that reviewers usually don't use in relation to murder mysteries. But I think it's because of that scene and some of the other sort of magical Christmas moments. I dedicated this book to my editor. And I said to Pete, who loves A Christmas Miracle, because he kept telling me this is a book about murder, but it's also a book about Christmas miracles. And I think, I surprised myself. Now I am all about Christmas, Hanukkah, winter solstice, anything that has anything to do with December, I'm all in. So I drew upon that, my love of the whole season.
There is some Christmas holiday fairy dust, I think, sprinkled on this book.
Yeah, and that was fun because you don't do that in murder mysteries. So
right.
This was an opportunity to do that.
So this is book number 7 in the Mercy Carr Mystery series. How much time has passed in Mercy's life through these books?
Well, not that much because that's a big decision you have to make when you're writing a series. If you write the series in real time and you're lucky, really great, like the Lee Childs and the Michael Connellys, they're Bosch and Jack Reacher, they age in real time. And 30 years later, they're getting a little long in the tooth. And so I didn't want to do that. So I did what other writers have done, which is every book is the next season. Because I really wanted to write about the seasons. What I love about New England is the seasons. It's so different. Every season is so different, and they offer so many opportunities in terms of weather, in terms of theme, all these different things for a writer, right? So I wrote each one in a different season. So not that much time has passed. Less time has passed. Now with the baby, in the last book, the baby was born. In this book, she's 9 months old. So I did skip ahead a little bit. But basically, I try to do every season.
Yeah.
To slow it down.
That's what I like about the books, too, because I think you use not just the physical characteristics of the season, but just the mood of the season. Right. Like the last time we talked, it was mud season. And I remember asking Paula, what makes mud season so great for a mystery novel? And she said, it's unpredictable. It could be sunny one minute. It could be rain the next minute. It could be spitting snow at you the next minute. And it's dark and then it's light. And so I love that you do that.
Yeah, well, I love that. I was on a panel recently with Joseph Finder, and I said, that winter was my favorite season. And And he looked at me and he said, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I love winter, and that's one of the reasons I like this book is it's set in winter because I love snow.
Right. Well, you called for it because
Yes, I did.
we've had lots of
Yes,
snow tonight.
I'm being rewarded and punished for my love of snow tonight.
You have more power than you realize.
Yeah, the snow gods. I tempted fate.
Well, when, as an author, Paula, will you know that you're done with Mercy? You know, it's been a great series, 7 books. I've read 2 or 3. They're all fun. They're all different. But when will you know that you're done?
I don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, usually
That's a fair answer.
you don't have to know. As like I tell my clients, you know, the answer to could you make this book a series is always yes. And the answer to the series is over, when the publisher tells you the series is over, the series is over. Which is not to say I don't want to write other things, because I do. I would like to write something without a dead body in it, which, you know, might be a challenge for me now, because the dead bodies really drive the plots. I took a class recently with Matt Weiner, who wrote, you know, Mad Men, created Mad Men, and also wrote for The Sopranos. And it was a wonderful class through the Los Angeles Review of Books about the imagination. And I told him, I said, you know, my imagination is kind of stuck in a rut, this murder mystery, you know, dead body rut. And he said, "Now, Paula, I wrote 92 episodes of Mad Men without a single murder. You can do it too." so I might want to try to do that. But I'm not finished with Mercy. I'm only finished with Mercy when readers tell me they're finished with Mercy. So I'm writing book 8 now, and I would love to see the series go at least to 10. It's a nice round number, 10.
All right.
But we'll see.
Well, thank you, Paula.
Well, thank you.
It's been so fun.
All 5 of us.